Welcome everyone to the let me try that again. Welcome everyone to the Northeast Indiana Basketball Summit. I'm your host, Ben Smith, joined by my co-host, Jeff Metzger. Before introducing our guest, we want to thank Feel for the Game for providing the platform to have all these presentations live and available for replay. You can check out all the resources over at feelforthegame.com. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Tommy Strine, Director of Operations for men's basketball at Lamar University. Tommy attended Lakewood Park Christian, graduating in 2009. He scored over 1,600 points, ranking in the top 100 in Indiana high school all-time scoring. He played 1 year at Anderson before an injury. In 2010, his coaching career began with Cindy Heat. He was in charge of logistics, development, camps, and workouts. He had one season at Marion High School, where he was the JV head coach and varsity assistant. He was responsible for player development, scouting, and game planning. In 2014-2015, he spent one season at Richmond as the video coordinator. In 2015 to 2018, he was at American as the director of basketball operations. He was in charge of team travel, budget, equipment, video, camps, and I'm sure much more. 2018, he spent at Cleveland State in the same role. And now he is currently at Lamar, where he's also the director of basketball operations. Before we get to the topic, Tommy, just tell me a little bit about all those experiences and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Like I said, like I was telling you guys earlier, Fort Wayne's obviously near and dear to my heart, and grew up in Auburn, and so this is big for me to be able to be part of the Northeast Indiana, summit here. So, just a little bit of my background. Like you said, I played high school basketball, was a decent high school basketball player there in Indiana. Fell in love with the game. I tell everybody whenever I do one of these that, if you don't play basketball in Indiana, they kick you out. So fell in love with basketball, started doing that. And played a year, at Anderson, had a great year there. We won our league, went to the NCAA tournament, Division III tournament, won a game in the tournament, had a great experience there. And ended up hurting my knee that summer, hurt my knee in high school, hurt it that summer again. And when I came back to Fort Wayne, needed to, do something for the summertime. A Division III basketball player, you're not on campus during the summer taking summer classes, so you have some time during the summer back home to do something. So reached out to Spiece, was so fortunate to get an opportunity to do so many things there. Help run tournaments, help run teams, do workouts with some high level guys. I just was talking to Rico Marrero the other day. I remember working out with him, doing stuff with him, James Blackman Jr., PJ Thompson, those guys, doing stuff with those guys at a high level, and learning that, I had kind of a niche for coaching, for player development, for being around players, and a passion for it. And so started to get into that. I did that for that summer, was planning on going back and playing, and hurt my knee again. Just said, maybe I'll, maybe playing's not it. Maybe it's going to be coaching. So stuck around Spiece for about 4.5 years. Those guys gave me more and more responsibility as time went on, and really helped me grow in a lot of areas. All those guys are awesome. And then, had a great relationship with James Blackman Sr., still do, was able to go down and help him out at Marion. And then 2014 hit. I was dating my wife for a year, and she kind of said, "Hey, figure it out. What are we going to do? Are you going to do the AAU thing forever? Or are you going to, kind of turn around and do the, or are you going to, try to make coaching into a career? What do you want to do?" And so I said, let's try to make coaching into a career. So I guess it was 2013, about December 2013, going into 2014, I started writing handwritten letters, to over 500 college coaches throughout the country, just asking for a GA job, a volunteer job, anything I could really find. And I heard back from 5 schools. 4 of them said no. The one that said yes was a school in Hawaii, that was going to offer a $500 stipend and a GA spot, and couldn't make that work financially. So here I am in April 2014, thinking like maybe college coaching is not going to be it. But my wife knew somebody up at Concordia University in Ann Arbor, one of the assistants up there, and they were looking for a GA slash assistant. So I met Ricky Yan, took that job, was able to help him recruit in April, run camps and everything all through the summer. Great experience. I was helping recruit, helping with the guys. My wife and I got married in August of 2014, and we moved up to Ann Arbor on the 10th. of August, and that's when things kind of started to accelerate a little bit. I got a phone call about 3 weeks into my tenure into living in Ann Arbor, I guess it was, from Ryan Butler at the University of Richmond. And he was the operations guy there. And he said, hey, we got a volunteer video coordinator job here at the University of Richmond. Would you be interested? And I said, absolutely. He said, when can you interview? I said, tomorrow. And I drove through the middle of the night all the way to Richmond, threw on a suit at a gas station and just said, here we go. And they took me around the building. And at the end of the day, offered me the job. I accepted it, and I moved down there in September of 2014. My wife ended up coming in November. That was a great way to get in the doghouse right away. But was down there for a year, learning under Coach Mooney, learning the Princeton offense, learning the matchup zone, just learning basketball from a college level. And I was blessed that my first season in college basketball was in the A-10 at a high level. We were one game away from the NCAA tournament. We're a 1 seed in the NIT, had a great year, had Miami on the ropes in the quarterfinals of the NIT to go to the semifinals. Got a coach in Madison Square Garden, got a coach at, sit on the bench at Madison Square Garden during a game was unbelievable. So got to do all that, and that was a great experience. And, as I, started to progress, it was like, I want to move up to the next role. You go from video coordinator to usually ops and try to keep moving up. Coach Brennan at American University and Coach Mooney were roommates at Princeton. And so there was a connection there. They had a job open as the director of basketball operations. Got that job, worked with some amazing people there. Coach Brennan's one of the best, human beings that I've ever been around, and a great basketball coach. Learned more Princeton offense there. Was blessed to learn from Pete Carrill. The Hall of Famer Pete Carrill came down to our practices multiple times, and I got to, be able to drive him back and forth from Princeton to Washington, D.C. and learn from him. And that was just phenomenal in that regard, was to be able to learn from him. So after 3 years there, in a low budget, low income ops job in Washington, D.C., it had an opportunity to come back closer to home, to Cleveland State, and had a year there, and was there for a year. And then after that season, one of my biggest mentors in the business, Kim Lewis. I met him at Richmond. I worked with him at Richmond. He's one of the best human beings I've ever been around. One of my best friends and biggest mentors. He worked for Coach Price at McNeese State years ago, and they had an ops job down here at Lamar that we thought would be a little bit better of an opportunity for my career. And probably a little bit better for my family and happiness, and moved down to Texas and had my first year down here. Never had been to Texas before until I moved down here and got down here with Coach Price. So in a roundabout way, I've been a little bit of everywhere. As I go through this presentation here, Ben, just let me know when you want me to start going through my PowerPoints and everything. But as I start going through that, I'll touch on, things that I've learned at each spot. And things that I think are advantageous to moving to different spots, throughout the ops role, and how that can be advantageous to you moving forward in your career.
Sure. The screen share should be ready to go whenever you want. But Jeff, did you have any questions for Coach before he starts?
I do not have any as of now.
All right. Hold on here. Let me go slideshow here. We're going to play it from start here. All right, you guys good there? You see it? All right.
Yep.
So obviously, I kind of just went through my journey, the sacrifice, the playing career. I don't want to spend any time on that, but the grassroots stuff was huge for me. It's huge for me now. Even, just having so many, and I think that, everything's relationship based in this business. You're going to hear that a ton from people all the time. Relationships. And being in the grassroots and everything like that, I think was huge for me. Running tournaments and getting to know, helping run tournaments, and getting to know different AAU program directors and stuff like that has really paid dividends for me. Just if you ever need anything, from a certain state, somebody there, being able to call them, and then, I went through my college experiences, but, the big one right here is sacrifices. It's not necessarily your sacrifices. My first job, the University of Richmond, my office is literally the shoe closet. So I'm sitting in the shoe closet, breaking down film, and I had no idea what I was doing when I first got the job. I just kind of slugged through it and figured it out. My wife, she sacrificed so much moving away from family, and we're 21 hours away from home right now with a 2-week-old baby. So she's made so many sacrifices herself. So you add in all that, and then, the sacrifices financially that you make. You don't make a lot of money as an ops guy. You don't make a lot of money as a like I said, video coordinator. I was completely volunteer. I didn't get anything. I didn't get per diem. I got meals on the road. That was about it. And Coach Mooney was unbelievable in helping me with meals and stuff like that. But I ate 2 meals a day in the cafeteria, just like a student, and just kind of, slugged away, but was chasing a dream. So that's, you gotta kind of recognize that there are going to be sacrifices, and sometimes, a lot of times the sacrifice isn't yours. It's somebody else's. So let's start with ops. Like, what is it? Everybody always asks me, what is it that you do? You tell them that, hey, I work for the basketball program at Lamar, and they think it's the coolest thing in the world, and really it is. If you think about it, and this is something I struggle with. I want to be an assistant coach someday. And then I want to be a head coach someday. And I get frustrated when I interview for a job and I think that I'm better than somebody and they get it. I get very frustrated. And I was challenged actually during this quarantine by some big time coaches, that I brought up stuff with on different things. They told me um, just as bad as you want to be an assistant coach, somebody wants to be an operations guy. So you got to be, understand that you're blessed where you are, but don't stop working. So, but when I tell people ops, they don't understand. They think, oh, basketball coach, but the average basketball fan thinks that, as they're watching the game, they just see the product, they see the end product. They see the guys that are playing, they see the guys that, show up to the arena in the uniforms and the shoes and they don't see the practice, to a degree, they probably appreciate the practices and everything, all the sacrifices the guys have gone through. But they don't understand that there's other stuff that goes into it. They don't understand that the guys got to get fed, guys had to get to the hotel, guys had to get a flight, guys had to get a bus. Those shoes had to be ordered, those uniforms had to be ordered. There's a lot that goes into it. So the first thing is your organization that goes into it. You organize everything. You organize your gear orders. You organize your food orders. You organize, most places you're involved in class schedules. You're involved in class check schedules. You're in, you order buses. You order flights, credit card statements. You're usually responsible for your head coach's recruiting travel. And then everything else, everything from ordering stuff for the office to, being a liaison to everybody else in the departments, and so it's a lot of secretary work. And really it's just anything and everything that you don't think of with basketball, that goes on behind the scenes. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is that you're constantly trying to talk to other people in the department. You want to keep a good rapport with your athletic directors and your academic coordinators and your compliance people, because you are the go-to between them. In some places I've been, the head coach is a little bit more involved with those people. In some places you are the middleman and you are the one that's getting yelled at from both sides, and you're in between it. So when people ask me what is ops, it's everything that you don't want to do. When you're being a basketball coach. So that's one of the things that will go from there. Let's see here. So the skills that you need to, kind of be an ops person, if you want to get into coaching, and I'll talk about this later a little bit, but like, if your last name's not Kalapari, your last name's not, Krzyzewski, and you didn't play at a high level like I did, you didn't play at, Kentucky, you didn't play at, even IPFW, you didn't play at, Ohio, you didn't play at one of those schools. It's very, very hard to be an assistant coach in college basketball right away at the Division I level. It's very, very hard to, even, jump right into ops really, at those levels. So you need to start at the video coordinator level, start at the lower levels and work your way up. One of the things is that I would encourage those that are listening that want to get into it is have these skills here ready to go, because you're probably going to be an operations person at some point. And to a degree, if you want to become an assistant coach, you're going to need these. And the first thing I mentioned was organization. I am the most unorganized person in the world. My wife will tell you, 1,000 times over that organization is not my thing. You should see our fridge when I come home and try to load it. It's a mess. So I had to learn that, that's a learned thing, and everybody's organization looks different. Like, I know where everything is on my computer desktop, but if you were to look at my computer desktop, you think I was schizophrenic. Like, it's pretty crazy. But I know where everything is on it, so your organization is going to be different than everybody else's. You got to have strong interpersonal skills, and I think that, that's so important because you're dealing with so many people. You're responsible, on a daily basis. I deal with boosters. I deal with our players. I deal with our players' parents. I deal with our coaches, our coaches from other programs, our athletic trainers, our academic coordinators, our compliance people, our athletic secretary, our AD, our associate AD, the president of the university at times, our business office. I literally will talk to those people probably every day, our housing people, everybody. I'll deal with them, if not every day, at least once a week, every person on campus. So you have to have great skills to be able to go around, especially in a smaller community like Lamar is in Beaumont, because you're dealing not only with those people, but you're also dealing with people in the community for community service stuff, for, trying to get meals donated, for camps, for everything. So you have to have those skills of, the gift of gab is what, some people call it. You got to be able to relate to people and talk to people. And then really, that kind of goes into coaching in general because of the recruiting side of it and the, developing in players and stuff like that. But as far as when it comes to ops, you have to be really, really good at that. Many hats. And this is something that I got at Speece that was just unbelievable to me and has, helped me tenfold. Having so many different responsibilities, whether it's logistics, uniform ordering, there's so many things that I learned from my time in the grassroots with Speece that I've carried over to the college side. That at the time I thought sucked. It was just like, I don't want to do a gear order. Like, this is, I don't want to unpack a bunch of boxes and organize them. I don't want to, I don't want to put together like I don't want to put together a schedule for Tuesday night skills. Like, I like all this stuff, but all the hats and the way that I had to organize them and the way I had to do it all has translated 100% to what I do now. And I'm thankful for that. And then this last one, and I think this is for any person, coach, anything, you have to have a servant's heart. Your entire job is to serve others. You're to serve your head coach, to the players, to everybody else on campus, to the assistant coaches, the players' parents. You have to have a servant's heart. You have to be the most selfless person on your staff. You got to invest in others, and eventually that'll invest in you. The most important person, in Coach Price tells me this all the time, the most important recruit you'll ever recruit are your own guys. And so, you got to have the servant's heart for your players first and foremost, the other coaches. But the more selfless you are, the better you're going to be at the ops job. And honestly, I think the more selfless you are, the better coach you're going to be moving forward. So like I said earlier, I don't want to be an ops guy forever, and I'll make that known to anybody. My head coach knows that. Any interview that I go into, I let them know, look, I'm not here to be an operations guy forever. I'm not here to be an administrative guy. Like, I don't want to be an administrator. I don't want to be a secretary. I want to be a basketball coach. Because I don't think I talked about this, but an operations guy is not allowed to be on the floor coaching during practices, and he's not allowed to recruit. He's only allowed to be involved in recruiting when a guy's on campus. And then he's, as far as player development, he's not allowed to be on the floor. He's not allowed to rebound. He's not allowed to do anything. So from a basketball standpoint, I don't get to do a lot, which sucks. You really want to, during practices, you want to be out there doing the stuff that the assistant coaches are. You don't get into college coaching to do spreadsheets and gear orders. You get into college coaching to be able to help guys get better and help them win games. And then, obviously, the recruiting aspect of it is exciting because you get to travel around, see different players, have different evaluations, and that's what you want to do. But you don't get to do that as ops. So as you're trying to be an ops guy, if you're trying to move up in the business, how does it translate to coaching? And I when I first got in, I had a buddy, tell me all the tips. You have to be creative, you have to be proactive, you have to be active. And so starting out with creative, you got to find ways to be able to be involved in those things. So something that a couple things that I've done, to kind of be creative, to trying to help myself prepare myself for being a coach someday out of this ops role. The first thing that I do is I try to be the first one in the office every day. I try to get in about 7:30, 8 o'clock every day. and make sure that I get all my stuff done before the other coaches are in. So, most of the coaches get in about 10 o'clock most mornings, so I'm trying to get in at 7:30 and get 2.5 hours on them. So everything that I get done, by the time that they get in, I can kind of sit in on meetings and stuff. Most of the time, our practice meetings and recruiting meetings are in the afternoon after lunch. So for me, I try to get in early enough where everything's done by noon, so I can eat lunch with the coaches, and then I can go and I can sit in on those meetings. Whether I contribute to those meetings or not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just depends on who you work for. But to be able to sit in on those meetings, is important. And so getting creative with that on how I could do that, and my creativity was, hey, just become a morning person. I wake up every morning at 5 a.m. I go work out, go to work. And so I can sit in on those meetings and go to practice, and I know kind of what's going on, so I'm prepared when my opportunity comes. Another way to be creative is have a diverse skill set. So I had no idea how to use PowerPoint, or I'm sorry, not PowerPoint, Photoshop. 2 years ago, I decided that I was going to get good at Photoshop so I could be creative in the recruiting process. So that way, hey, assistant A is recruiting player B. I'm going to put together a little graphic for player B and give it to the coach A to send to player B. And, there I'm involved in recruiting, and just different ways to kind of touch recruiting in that way. So being creative in that, and the social media thing, I think is huge right now, especially in the times we live in. Be creative on how you can do different things for your program, through social media, but you got to be creative, find different ways, different niches. Video is big right now. What are some different things you can do with that? So the next one is be proactive. Try to get ahead of everything. For me, I always want to have a solution to a problem before it even becomes a problem. We don't have problems, at Lamar. We do, but I try to have a solution for it so it never actually is one. So for instance, like every time that we go on the road, I know where the nearest Popeye's chicken is, just in case after the game somebody messes up the post game order and that food's not going to be there. I can go to Popeye's and pick up 23 pieces and have it on the bus before anybody even knew that everything was messed up. Or if we're going to flights, I know where the next flight's coming from. If we're gonna miss a flight, if we end up missing a flight, the next one, I know where it's at. Or the bus company, the bus doesn't show up, I know who I'm calling, where I'm, who I'm getting mad at to be able to get that bus there. So just being ahead of it, and that kind of goes into coaching. Coach Price down here is always big on, like, always have a plan B, because, you strike out on A, you better not say I don't have anybody else, when you're recruiting. Being ahead of the game, during a game with adjustments. Hey, I knew he was going to go 2-3 in this possession out of the timeout. We already have a 2-3, we have a 2-3 play drawn up because, I've watched enough film, or I've gotten ahead of it enough, where I know that play is going to happen. So being proactive in everything that you do, as an ops person, really does translate into coaching in a lot of ways. And then you have to be active. You can't just sit back on your hands, and kind of do nothing. Like I said, I heard a quote the other day, that, are you a hard worker or do you just work hard? If you know that something's not going to happen for you, are you still going to work hard for it? And that's the definition of being a hard worker. I think that everybody in the country, every ops guy will say that he works hard. And I would probably agree with most of them, but it doesn't make them a hard worker. Because they're just going through the motions and putting out fires here and there. But you got to be active on social media. Be active for not only yourself but your program. Be active in your community, because at the end of the day, that's part of your job is to really push your program in the community. But you also do that for recruiting. You never understand, you never know when you're going to take a recruit out to lunch, or dinner or whatever, and a booster's there, or somebody from the program's there, and they wave hi to you because they know you, and it just looks good. So being active in the community, being active on your campus, is huge. To be able to know different professors, know different people on, your ADs, like I said, different international services if you're recruiting, and that goes into the whole recruiting thing, that when you're on campus, people on campus know you. And, if you're active in trying to, build relationships throughout campus, the professors and stuff like that. And they know that, hey, I have a basketball player in class. He's great, and stuff like that. So, the TIVs I think are huge, and how it translates into coaching. So, this one's going to take a minute here. So challenges in the ops role, right? So some of the biggest challenges in the ops role is first off is that you're the low man on the totem pole. You're definitely the lowest paid, more than likely. Now, some bigger staffs will have like a video coordinator in GA that'll be smaller than you, or will have a lower pay grade than you. And I had that at Cleveland State, but that was it. Like I said, my first job was a video coordinator. I was volunteer. I can't get any lower on the pay grade than that. But you are the low man on the totem pole, both pay, probably as far as, general respect, throughout the program and everything like that. Not that you're disrespected, but, you're just not, when a player comes and needs something, he's not coming to you necessarily unless it's for new shoes, or, he wants his per diem check, or he wants to know something about financial aid or something like that. He's probably coming to you for that. But like anything basketball wise, he's not coming to you, probably, most likely. And then, you're the one that like everything kind of gets heaped upon. If coach is late for a meeting, you're the one that gets the phone call. If somebody one of your players missed class, you're probably the one that gets the phone call. So you're the kind of the one that gets all the crap kind of piled on top of them. And it is a challenge because it gets frustrating. If there's a complaint to be had, it's coming towards you, and it's going to be everything from, I mean, I can go on and on and on. The air conditioning on the bus is out, like is too high. Can you turn it down? The air conditioning, the heat's too high on the bus. Can you turn it down? Or it's too, my hotel room doesn't have, whatever, the cable's out in my hotel room. Can you get it fixed? From everything from the food's cold to they forgot my fries to, everything comes to you. Like it really is unbelievable to me sometimes that people, the simplest challenges, they'll come to you to have them fix them, as opposed to, just taking care of themselves. So you add on to that too, everything that goes on in the program that's bigger, as far as like, hey, like, the bus doesn't show up, that's you. Hey, like we need somebody to set up community service, that's you. So anything that can go wrong, anything that's gone wrong is coming towards you. It's not going to the head coach. It's not going to the assistant coach. It's not going to the AD. It's coming towards you, and you're expected to fix it. And then it goes back to, if you have good relationships throughout all the campus, if you have good relationships in different parts of the community and stuff like that, you can put out a lot of those fires, and it doesn't get as daunting as much as you want. But so understand that you are the low man on the totem pole. Everything does. When they say that crap flows downhill, it does, and you're at the bottom of the hill. So be prepared that everything kind of comes to you, and that kind of flows into the next one, that you're always a servant and you're never served. Very rarely are people asking, what can I do for you? You're always asking, what can I do for them? And that's something I struggled with early in my career, still struggle with a little bit today. But it does come back to you eventually. But understand that, your job as an operations person is to come in and to serve your head coach. It's to serve your assistant coaches. But at the end of the day, it's to serve your players. And that's the first and foremost, is that the players are most important, and they're not going to serve you. So don't ask for anything back from them, because they're not going to give it to you, and you shouldn't ask for anything back from them. But you got to have a servant's heart, and you got to understand that you're always the servant. And it's a rewarding thing, but at the same time, it sucks at the same time, because you never think that it's gonna, pay dividends, but it does. And then the last one is crisis is common, and I think that, people always ask me, like, what's the one thing that you can say about ops? I'm like, crisis management, man. And it's like Murphy's law. Anything that will go wrong or can go wrong will go wrong. But like I said earlier, as I've gotten better at this job, I kind of realized that, like, if I can have a solution to a problem before it becomes a problem and nobody knows about it, then it's not a problem. It was my problem, kind of, but it's not our program's problem, and you don't want to have any problems in your program. So, I'll give an example. My first ops experience as a travel, I was an American, and we were supposed to go down to LSU to play Ben Simmons and the Tigers. We're going down to LSU. We're going to fly into Baton Rouge. and play them on like a Monday or something like that. And we were supposed to fly out on Sunday, right? Well, weekend hours, I booked the flights through a travel agency, and they changed our flight Saturday night. Never told me. They emailed our business office. Our business office was out because it was the weekend, so I never had heard from them on it. So we were supposed to take an 8 a.m. flight out of Dulles Airport down to Baton Rouge and get down there and spend the day down there, practice down there, and kind of go from there. Well, I got a phone call at 6:00. Said, "Why'd you miss your 6:00 flight with 25 people on it?" I said, "What are you talking about? I have an 8:00 flight." They said, "No, we changed it last night because there wasn't enough room on the 8:00 flight." So now here I am, trying to get our team to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 25 people, bouncing around. We ended up driving up to Philly, took 2 different flights, got down to New Orleans, flew into New Orleans, got there like midnight, practiced at Tulane, went in and were like up 7 points against LSU at halftime, ended up getting beat. But, long story short, there is crisis. There's going to be crisis management in everything that you do, but it's how you handle that. And kind of going back to what I said earlier about, how I try to get into the office earlier to get everything done in the morning so I can sit on the meetings in the afternoon. It also allows me to put out my crises that come up during the day. I might have a list. I have a list every morning that I go into work with about 15 to 20 things usually on it that I want to get done. I usually try to get those done by noon, and I usually do. But as I'm adding those 15 to 20, there's another 5 to 10 that come up during the day that that just start popping up. And it's, hey, so-and-so needs to register for, his classes, or so-and-so needs to file stuff for FAFSA, stuff that just pops up that needs to be done that day. So by getting in early and taking care of that kind of, gives you a little bit of time to be able to do that stuff in the afternoon. So as a young coach, why get into the operation side? Why go this route? I just told you everything that's terrible about the ops job, and everything that, you're the low man on the totem pole. You're not making a lot of money. Everything like that. Well, the first thing is you got to decide if you want to, do you want to get into Division I basketball? Basically, do you want to and don't get me wrong, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and nobody's journey is going to be the same as anybody else's. But this is one of the more common ways to get into Division I basketball. So you got to decide, do I want to get into Division I basketball? So the first thing is, it's a chance to get your foot in the door. I went the video coordinator route first, which was me getting my foot into the door. And now, getting bumped up into ops. Some guys might be able to get into ops right away. Some guys might have to go video to ops. Just either one of those. I kind of put those in the same category because they are staff positions that can't be on the floor, and they're entry level positions. And a lot of places don't have a video coordinator as is. But it's a chance to get your foot in the door. Once you decide that you want to be a Division I basketball coach, it's a chance to get your foot in the door. And not to say that you can't go be a Division II assistant, which I think is great, to get your recruiting experience, because I think that it helps you advance quick. Go be a JUCO coach and then come up that way. I think that's awesome. I think that's another way a lot of guys are doing it that way, and it's been awesome for them to do it that way. So those ways are awesome too. This is just a way. This is the way that I took, and this is the way that I'm trying to push through. And hey, I'm going to be successful at it eventually. It is a way to get your foot in the door. You do develop a total understanding of Division I basketball. I've been blessed to work for 4 different coaches, right? And so I've been able to develop an understanding of what all goes into a Division I basketball program, from the logistical side, from everything like that, from 4 different areas. And I can kind of, go in a little bit later. I'll go into why it's been good that I've worked in 4 different areas and 4 different schools. But just understanding that, it's not all X's and O's, and how do I get this guy a shot? How do I stop this guy from scoring? How do I recruit this player? How do I not recruit? How do I, what kind of player do I want to recruit? It's everything else that goes into it. You don't realize how much a head coach has to go through in Division I basketball until you're scheduling everything for him. You're scheduling all of his meetings with boosters and community people across campus, and you're trying to keep him organized. And you realize on top of that, he's also coaching and trying to run a program, trying to keep his job in that regard, while probably having a family on this, back home. And, so it's like, you got, 75 different things. You don't realize everything that goes into being a Division I coach, everything that goes into a Division I basketball program, until you kind of see it from the ground floor. So that's good, and eventually, if I'm a head coach that's not at the Division I level, which I'm open to, is because I know the understanding of what a head coach has to go through from the base up, and I can help. I can do that. So as you're transitioning into being a head coach at maybe an NAI level or JUCO level or anything like that, you've done everything that it is involved to run a program. And you have that. Because again, when you're a head coach, you're not just coaching, you're not just recruiting, you're doing everything else. Basically, that an ops guy is doing, just maybe to a smaller extent. The other thing is to build relationships. Like I said earlier, grassroots space was huge for me to build relationships with not only those guys, because those guys have been awesome to me. All too many guys to name, but all those guys have been awesome to me. Um, but at the same time, them introducing me to other program directors and stuff like that has been awesome. So as an ops guy as well, you're involved in camps. You're involved in on campus recruiting where a prep school coach is bringing his players onto campus for a visit. You're usually responsible for that, so you build that relationship with them. So and so is bringing his high school team to camp. You get to know them. Elite camps, you get to know the AAU coaches that are bringing all those guys to elite camps. So you get to build so many relationships that kind of help you as you transition into Division I coaching. But then you get to build relationships with your players. You have a unique relationship with your players, more so than what your assistant coaches have, more so than what your head coach has. Your head coach and your assistant coaches, they're there to discipline, they're there to teach. They do build a relationship with them, don't get me wrong, but it's a different relationship from you. You're there to make sure that they get through life, that they get through school, that they're taken care of, with their FAFSA, with their COA money, with everything. So you see them in a totally different light. The players will usually confide in you in different ways than they do the coaches. So you build a different type of relationship with them. Now you also build a different type of relationship with your head coach and your assistant coaches from a standpoint of, you always have to have a pulse on the team in a different way than they do. So the team is all, into one sync. But then you build relationships with the athletic directors, you build them with compliance people, you build them with that. And that's something that I've enjoyed a ton from being ops is I've got to meet so many good people outside of basketball on campuses, from professors to academic coordinators to, our secretary at Cleveland State was the sweetest woman in the world. And I got to build a great relationship with her. So you get to build relationships not only in your staff and your players, but also everybody around campus. And then as far as how it helps you in basketball, and I'll kind of speak to this a little bit, with your camps in different areas, something that's been unique for me, and something that I try to sell for myself. I started out in grassroots, so I have the AAU connections throughout the Midwest. Thank Todd Hensley, thank Casey Adams, thanks Jared Balf, Jared Corals, Brian Rogers. I mean, I could go on and on. Chris Ponce, all those guys. Thank all those guys for putting me in those opportunities to be able to build those relationships, because those have been so big for me. Ryan Owens, another guy that I've gotten to know really well, that's put me in some good situations as well. Those guys have been so awesome for me. To be able to build relationships with other guys and other programs like a Jason Martin up at Grand Rapids Storm, Quincy Simpson down at C2K, so getting to know those guys because of the opportunity that I had through Spiece, so that was my first thing, is that I built relationships there to help me transition into coaching. Then I go to Richmond, an American university out on the East Coast, high academic schools that recruit prep schools quite a bit. So I got to know a lot of the prep school coaches on the East Coast, as well as, the hoop group people out there. Jared Check, that is now an assistant in Air Force, was a hoop group guy. So I got to know him, got to know a couple other guys through hoop group through that, and become friends with those guys. So I am expanding my recruiting base. I'm expanding my friendships, and also, expanding my footprint a little bit. Because the East Coast is just different. It's different than the Midwest. Well, then I come back to Cleveland State, and I get to, be involved in the Midwest stuff. I get to build a relationship with those coaches in Ohio, and high school coaches and stuff like that, that I had never really met, the high school coaches in the Cleveland area, and the Akron area and stuff like that. So I got to build those a little bit. And then I go down to Lamar, and it's a very heavy JUCO league down here, on top of, Texas being Houston being a hotbed and stuff like that. So I got to build a lot of JUCO relationships down here. and then I, get involved with rising coaches and Adam Gordon and Brandon Rosenthal and those guys, and get to know those guys, really, Andy Farrell, those guys really well because of, the opportunities that I've had bouncing around. Now my relationships that I've built with everybody has made me so much more well-rounded where, and then you add on top of that as well, I didn't even mention this, that I took 2 teams to foreign tours. I was responsible for that as an operations guy, to take guys on foreign tours. So I took Cleveland State to Italy. I was organized that entire thing. Took American University to Australia, organized that entire thing, but also made contacts over there and built relationships there, through the ops role, because you're touching people in different ways. So when I'm interviewing for an assistant coaching job, you want to recruit JUCO guys. I spent a year at Lamar. I spent, a year and a half at Lamar. I know all these, I was able to build relationships with a lot of these JUCO coaches because we recruited JUCO guys. So these guys are calling me, or they're coming onto campus for their official visits, unofficial visits, whatever. I get to know these guys. Oh, you want an international guy? Well, I took a guy to Australia, and I have contacts in Australia. You want Italy? I have people in in Europe. Prep school guy. You want a guy that's a year older that's prep school. Cool. I'll call up so and so from the East Coast. You want somebody from the Midwest. From Illinois. I'll call up somebody I know in Illinois. You want somebody from Ohio? I'll call up Quint. Indiana. It's been really, really good for me building those relationships, and I've only been able to build those from the ops position because I'm responsible for so many different things and being so many different places. So your relationship building is one of the biggest reasons why I think ops is good, and also I think working in different areas than what you're used to. So I kind of went on a tangent there, but I'm so big on the relationship part of the ops being so important. So one of the last things I kind of want to talk about a little bit is your journey. Your journey is going to be different than my journey. My journey has been frustrating. It's been long. It's been joyous. It's been everything. It's been I've been more content this year than I ever have been. It's been a struggle. I've worked for bad people. I worked for great people. More great than bad, which is awesome. I've enjoyed every second of it. Looking back on it, it beats working for a living is what I would tell you. But your journey is going to be different. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. My grandfather always used to tell me, and it's no different than college basketball. But how do you break in? For me, it was 500 handwritten letters, not hearing back from many of them. But because I wrote a letter to Ryan Butler at the University of Richmond, he saved it. And when they had a job open in August, just happened to call me, and I was willing to go out of my way to do it. And it kind of got my foot in the door, and I kind of worked my way up, and it's not going to, it might not be you write 500 handwritten letters. It might be you started, an NAIA school, and, you do a really good job there, and there's just a connection there, and somebody makes a connection, and you get it. And luck plays a big factor in it. But understand that your journey isn't somebody else's. And I've had to realize that my journey to being an assistant coach, my journey to being a head coach someday, is going to be totally different than others. For instance, a guy that I know, I wouldn't call him a friend necessarily, but a guy that I respect a lot. He was a lawyer in Texas and ended up saying he doesn't want to be a lawyer anymore. He wanted to coach basketball, took a player development job at UMBC the year that they were the 16 seed, and beat Virginia. And somehow, some way, one of his buddies that was a lawyer that he worked with ended up becoming the athletic director at a Division I school, and ended up hiring him from the player development with no head coaching experience, no assistant coaching experience in the Division I level, and ended up hiring him at a Division I school. He's on his 3rd year there and has won 20 games last year, I think it was. His journey was different. His journey was totally different. There's other guys that, their journey is they jumped right into an assistant job, and now they're, one step away from being a head coach at the Division I level at 30 some years old. Like, they just got lucky, so everybody's journey is different. You can't get frustrated with it. I get frustrated with it a ton, and I'm the worst one to say don't get frustrated with it, but don't get frustrated with it. But how you break in is kind of up to you. What do you think's best? There's no right, wrong way. It's just however you get your foot in the door. It doesn't matter. And like I said, nobody's journey is the same. And I learned this the other day. All it takes is one, and it probably won't be your first choice. And that's so true. All it takes is one yes. And Kevin Devitt, I ton of respect for the guy. He was an assistant coach at UAB. They got let go this year. and he did a podcast right after it. And he said, you just kind of stand in the middle. You got to be a boxer's mentality. You just stand in the middle of the ring. You take your hits, and eventually you land one, yourself. And so all it takes, your journey trying to get into operations, trying to get into college coaching, all it takes is one. You're going to get told no 1,000 times over. I've been told no every year, multiple times for 6 years for an assistant coaching job. And, it's, hey, I want this job in the Midwest. I'm going to go for it. And I get told no, you're just, don't have recruiting experience, or you don't, there's a guy that he's going to bring a player, sorry, you're close, you're good, you're close. You're like, and you get so frustrated. Right. But understand that, all it takes is one. And when you get that one, that's where you're supposed to be. And when you're there, you got to bloom where you're planted, and something that I've struggled with over my 6 years was I was always looking towards the next step. What's the next step? I got to position myself for an assistant job, position myself for a head coaching job. But you got to be great in your role that you have now. Bloom where you're planted, be where your feet are. All those things are so true, and so important, because I think that at the end of the day, if you're great in the role that you have right now, you're going to be great in your next one. So be great in your role and understand that where you are now is where you're supposed to be. Now that doesn't mean that you don't, that doesn't mean that you don't strive for the next one. And this is something that my buddy Lucas McKay, who's an assistant at UMKC, preaches all the time. He kind of told me this and it stuck to me. He said, you just got to let your goals be known. Like, let people know what you want. Cause closed mouths don't get fed type thing. And that's so important. Your journey, for me, I want to be an assistant coach. I want to be a Division I assistant coach. I want to be a head coach someday. I'll be a Division III head coach. I want to be a college basketball head coach someday. And in the immediate, like, if I can be a Division I assistant coach to get me there, that's what I want to do. And I'll let that be known, because you can't just go through and keep your mouth shut and just kind of do your job, and that's good. You want to be the best worker, the hardest worker, and do your job. But you also got to know that you got to speak it into existence a little bit. And Lucas is an unbelievable example of that. He was on Clemson staff forever as, all kinds of different roles, staffer roles, wasn't assistant coaching roles, anything like that. And now he's an assistant at UMKC in a great situation. But he let it be known that, like, hey, I want to be an assistant coach. I don't want to be a staffer forever, because there are coaches that will say, like, hey, you're really good at ops. We're going to keep you here. I don't want a guy that wants to get bumped up or wants to move on to be an assistant coach. So you got to let that be known from the get-go, and then work towards it a little bit. So, a little bit about all that. And, like I said, nobody's journey is perfect. Nobody's journey is the same. There's a lot of luck involved to it. There's a lot of who what isn't as important, to be honest with you. I had no idea what I was doing with video when I went in. I actually drove down to Toledo. Kyle Barlow, who's now an assistant at Ohio, was a former video coordinator at Ohio, at Toledo, or at Michigan, before he went down to Toledo as an ops guy. And I called Barlow and I was like, man, I just took this job at Richmond. I have no idea what I'm doing. Can I come down and just, like, give me like a 10-minute overview of what I'm going to be, doing? He, like, walked me through it. I got to Richmond, still had no idea, just kind of figured it out. But at the end of the day, I worked hard enough where I figured it out. Understand that, you might go into a situation where you don't know exactly what you're doing, but just work hard and figure it out, and people will appreciate you for it. So, Ben, I don't know if there's anybody on here to ask any questions or anything like that, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to email me. I put my personal email on here. Like I said, I've been at so many different schools. Something I learned a long time ago was you use your personal email, so that way you don't lose all the other ones. And then I'm on there for Twitter. If you email me, I'm more than happy to put my cell phone number on for you, and communicate to you. I'm not too. My biggest thing is I want to pay it forward. I'm not too big to answer a text message from anybody, where it's a middle school coach, all the way up to, Coach K's on here, and you want to give me a call, man, and go ahead, so I appreciate you guys having me on. I look forward to any questions that you guys can send me through anything, and I hope you guys learned a little bit about, the ops job, how to get into it, and really just college basketball in general from a nuts and bolts standpoint, and how to move up, and what it takes to kind of be successful at this level. So.
I think that was great. Jeff, do you have anything for Coach?
Yeah, so I know you talked a little bit about what you've liked so far. What would you say is your most rewarding anything? What's the most rewarding thing you've got or what you've done since you've started your career?
Hands down. I had, I've had when players will text you and just be like, "Hey, how's your family doing?" or "Thank you." I had a player um, text me last year on Father's Day. I wasn't a father yet, and just say, "Hey, Happy Father's Day. You're the closest thing I've had to a father in 5 years." And to come from an operations standpoint meant the world to me. I had a guy that I coached at Cleveland State a couple years or 2 years ago just randomly text me during this quarantine. "Hey, coach, how's your family doing? How are you doing?" I'm proud, and for him to tell me, "I'm proud of you for everything you've accomplished." That means the world is when your players come back. I've had multiple times where a player will come back and just be like, "Coach, like I miss you," or "Thank you." Um, that's been the most rewarding thing, hands down, bar none. Winning's great, and I love winning. We had some rough years in America, and we weren't very good at Cleveland State. We were pretty good here this year at Richmond. We were awesome. So I've been on both sides of it. I've seen a 5-win season. I've seen a 25-win season. So I've seen both. Those are great. Wins are great. That's what you get into it for. But I tell you, it really hits home, and it really makes you realize, what you do it for when you get those type of text messages. When my daughter was born a couple weeks ago, just the players that reached out to me saying how thankful they were, and they couldn't wait to see her, and you're going to be a great dad. All that stuff really, really hit home, and I think that's why you do what you do.
Great. I like it.
Awesome. Well, one thing you said is the making your goals known to other people, like that makes them real, especially putting them down on paper. And like you said, you telling people you don't want to be operations forever. And I think that's, doing a great job where you are is great. But again, the balance between, putting your goals out there and making it known what you want to accomplish is
Right.
it's pretty important. So
Well, it's really important as you get into it to start, because like when you sit down in an interview with somebody, there are coaches that will say, I want my ops guy to be an ops guy forever. I don't want him looking for coaching jobs and stuff like that. And that's fine. There's guys that do that, and there's guys that make really good money to do that. For instance, our operations girl here at Lamar, she wants to be operations forever, and she's cool with being operations at Lamar for the next 5, 10, 15 years if she can, and just settling down in Beaumont, and she's cool with that. But you got to make it known in the quote unquote recruiting process, interview process, to that guy that's interviewing you, like, "Hey, like I want to be an assistant coach. I want to be, here's my goals. If they don't line up with what you see in this role as an operations, you probably shouldn't do it." No matter how lucrative that Division I job is, it's a Division I ops job. But if it's going to be a Division I ops job where you're not going to be able to move on, or your coach isn't going to try to push you to move you on, you probably, and that is your goal, and you probably don't want that job. But you got to make it known too. I'll sit in on some of these meetings and stuff, like these Zoom meetings. Now everybody's doing the Zoom meetings, which have been great. I'll send in on those, and I'll let people know in there, "Hey, I'm looking for an assistant coaching job at the Division I level." Not that I'm going to leave a great situation that I have here at Lamar for anything. Like I'm not gonna go to, like, the bottom, the last place team in the league for $12,000 just to be an assistant coach. I'm not I'm not gonna go do that. It just doesn't make sense for my career, or for my family or anything like that, because I'm in a really good situation here. If I can find a good situation somewhere, I'm gonna go for it. And that's what I want. So no, definitely, you got to make it known. You got to put it out in the universe. You got to, closed mouths don't get fed type thing. So.
one of the last things I guess I would ask is, with all the frustration, if you had to go back and you had some opportunities, was there one or a couple things you might approach differently, or try and pursue differently, based on your goals?
I don't think I have any regrets on how I've pursued anything. The only thing I think I probably wish I would have done is, I wish I probably would have done like a Division II or JUCO job first, NAIA job, something where I got some type of recruiting experience first. Because every job that I've interviewed for, that's like what it comes up is you don't have recruiting experience, right? And the only way that you get recruiting experiences is by getting an opportunity to recruit, right? So looking back on it, maybe when I was 23, when I took the job at Richmond, maybe I would have been better served to, staying with Ricky up at Concordia and getting the recruiting experience, or taking a JUCO job or something like, maybe I would have, but at the same time, it was a Division I job, and it got my foot in the door, and it's kept me in Division I basketball. So, it's like, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's like, which way do you go? So I really don't have any regrets. I've been very prepared for every interview I've ever done. I feel like I've been the most prepared person in those interviews. It's just somebody has to take a chance on you. You have to have, you gotta trust that somebody's going to take a chance on you. Rely on the relationships that you've built to help you out, and eventually, like I said, and this is what I believe in, is that when I do get that yes, that's where I'm supposed to be. So for all those no's, all the frustrations, everything like that, when I get that yes, that's where I'm supposed to be, and that's where I'm going to be, and that's where I'm going to push forward through.
Awesome, man. It'll all be worth it.
Yeah. And it's worth it now. I'm working for an unbelievable human being in Tick Price, working with some great assistant coaches here, and that's the other thing I'll tell guys too. It's as important who you work for and who you work with as it is where you're at. I'd much rather be at Lamar University working for Tick Price than these guys down here, because they're awesome people that I love working with them, than work at one of the top universities in the country for a guy that doesn't treat me well. So really, really take into consideration who you're working for, who you're working with, because at the end of the day, your happiness and your family's happiness is more important than anything in your career. And I learned that the hard way. I won't go into any of that, but that's pretty important, going through that.
Awesome. Well, I know you got that newborn, and you got
Yeah,
something probably better to do than this. So,
I appreciate you guys having me on. And like I said, anybody that watches this, on YouTube or whatever, that, reach out to me on that email. I'll give you my cell phone number from there. I don't want to big time anybody. I don't want to big time anybody. I'm not big time. So I don't deserve to big time anybody. So I'll more than happily get back to you, and do everything I can, and give you any advice that I can, anything that I can do with that. I'll carve out time to talk to you and go from there. So.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Talk soon. All right.